It's interesting that there are still people right now in the current year, in late 2020, that believe in the possibility of unity. Brett Weinstein ran a kind of crowd-based campaign, more philosophical than anything else, to propose reasonable candidates. Obviously nothing to do with the real election. This idea that the country can still be unified in some sense. And this further idea that assuming Biden wins, which has not yet officially been decided, despite what the media networks would claim, that this will be a step towards quote-unquote truth and reconciliation. The premise of this video is pretty simple, and that is that the United States is too far gone, has been too far gone for decades, to arrive at any sort of unity. Now, even as I speak, it seems quite likely that voter fraud has been committed in favor of Joe Biden. This has been called a hoax. It's been called propaganda, lies, whatever. I'm not 100% sure, but from what little I've looked into, it seems like a distinct possibility. But I'm not sure if Trump can get this through to the Supreme Court or really even get the cooperation he needs. It's a bit akin to a situation of having your bike stolen. Imagine you had your bike stolen, and you know who stole the bike, and you know where he lives, and you know where the bike is. It's literally in his backyard, chained up. But you need the police to cooperate for you to get the bike back. So you have everything you need, but you can't really do anything with that knowledge. And in this sense, I think, inasmuch as it's true with these allegations of voter fraud, Trump really has his hands tied behind his back, meaning I don't think he's going to prevail ultimately, even though it's not officially the case yet. I think it's very likely now that Biden will win, much to my chagrin. For the record, I don't like Trump or Biden, but Trump, to my mind, for a variety of reasons, is the lesser of two evils. That said, this idea that things are somehow going to improve under a Biden presidency, who actually believes that? As I pointed out in an earlier video not too long ago, politics is downstream from culture. And I have a great concern regarding the Biden presidency, not least of which because one of his claims that he made in his campaign is that he would establish an online task force to find people engaging in hate speech and misogyny and harassment and that sort of thing. We all know what that really means. And this is my basic reason for supporting Trump. I think as bad as the left is now, it will be worse under Biden. Let me steelman this other argument I've heard, namely that, in fact, Trump has promoted a lot of this insanity. And I don't think he's directly promoted it. I think he was a partial catalyst, but he was just a filter for things that are already there. So whilst Trump might drive the left insane and appears to be quite divisive, and that's obviously a euphemism, the fear that Biden brings with him, with his presidency, is that he'll be running business as usual, shilling for Wall Street corporations, the usual American political platform, but also paying lip service and perhaps even putting into action and effect various wishes from the far left. A counter-argument to that, I've been told, is that he's going to clamp down and bring back things to normalcy. It is too far gone. The reality is that the one solution, if you want to call it a solution, is never talked about. What happens when groups of people within a country don't get along or cannot get along? Well, we have this thing called balkanization. And it's no coincidence that the term balkanization comes from the geographical area we call the Balkans. Surprise, surprise. And what happened there? Well, it's a communist country, in theory designed for all people of Southern Slavic origin, that after the fall of the Iron Curtain dispersed into different countries. That said, what happens when people don't get along? You usually have wars, and that's indeed what happened in the 1990s. Many people might know about that. Maybe you lived through it, at least indirectly. I have talked to many a young person these days whose family fled the Balkans during the 90s, and they ended up in different places in Western Europe. And that's kind of what happens. And people split up, and they somehow manage more or less to get along, right? But they manage to get along after filing for divorce. What happens in a marriage when you just don't get along? You file for divorce, you move on, and with luck, you might get along in some cordial civil manner. You're never going to be lovers or friends again. You're not going to be married. Just as in the case of Serbia and, say, Croatia, I'm not an expert. My sense is that they have a civil relationship, but they don't exactly love each other. Could be wrong about that, but it's not too far off in terms of analogy. So it's okay for a Balkanization of the literal Balkans, but it is not okay to even entertain this idea in the context of the U.S., and it doesn't need to be violent. It doesn't need to be precipitated by war. But really what the United States needs is a divorce for reasons of irreconcilable differences. And this is not going away. Whoever becomes president, seems likely that Biden will, it's not going to go away. The divisions and the risks will remain because they are put in place by things outside of the office of the presidency, by cultural trends. And this seems to me the only viable solution long term. Splitting places up, states up, and entertaining the idea, theoretical though it might be, of different states going their own way, no pun intended. Now, I realize this is all theory, and since we're in the realm of theory, I can also speculate as to what the obstacles to that might be, apart from the reality that states have never been allowed to secede, and this type of thing is just pie in the sky. Despite it being pie in the sky, I think it is the only viable solution. Is that the left, with their mentality of give me an inch, take a mile, or as I had said once, take a league, won't let that happen, would not let that happen. The left would not allow a balkanization, a splitting to take place because they can't leave well enough alone. They couldn't say, you guys in Indiana and Ohio, you can do your own thing. We'll do our own thing in woke Portland or Calahelia or whatever. They wouldn't leave it at that. Everything needs to be incorporated into this insanity, and I think that's the real obstacle. But despite that, there's historical precedent in the world for this being functional, allowing for a countrywide divorce to take place so that people can once again be civil. Ultimately, do Californians really care about what somebody in Wichita or Topeka, Kansas is doing? Probably not. They only become inflamed because of social media. But without Kansas being properly part of California, it's not, it's only in a technical sense, they wouldn't get too upset, I suspect. Divorce is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes there are irreconcilable differences. In the case of the War of the Balkans, it led to untold death and destruction. So a divorce was necessary, of sorts. And although I don't think there's going to be that level of death and destruction involved in the post-election United States, the fact that people think there's going to be some smoothing over just because senile Biden, with his slick corporatist agenda, is back in office, I mean, it's not going to get better. And the divisions will become ever greater. Why? Because whether people like it or not, half the country voted for Trump, or at least half the voter base. And they're not going to like the fact that Biden's sitting in office. And especially if Biden decides to kowtow to the woke crowd, at least pay lip service. And lip service is bad enough, because that's the one thing about Trump. He's never paid lip service to the woke left. He's paid lip service to a whole bunch of things. I think he's an egomaniac. I don't really think he has a ideology or platform, but he systematically disregarded the worst of the left. And I don't think Biden can make that move, because nominally the Democrats are quote-unquote on the left. And it might be a future strategy of the Democrats moving forward to not only countenance the left, but also to embrace it and to take on at least nominally some of these ideas and spread it as a platform, because they will increase their voter base that way. And what do politicians care about? They care about votes. So I say, even though it's theoretical, for the sake of sanity, for the sake of preserving life and liberty, as people are wont to say in the United States, file for divorce. Allow a divorce to take place, amiable or otherwise, because that is the only solution going forward. A partitioning of the United States, a splitting, a balkanization, if you will. I don't see any other way around it. In any event, please hit the like button as always, share the video, subscribe if you've not yet done so, hit the bell icon to be informed of forthcoming videos, and as always, may the gods watch over you. You take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.